Sunday, March 17, 1968, Elvis Presley walked into a small black church in rural Mississippi, searching for something he'd lost somewhere along the way to fame. What happened when an 8-year-old boy who'd never heard of Elvis Presley started singing changed how Elvis understood his own gift. Elvis had been driving for hours with no real destination. It was one of those Sunday mornings when the burden of being Elvis Presley felt heavier than ever. The endless shows, the films, the non-stop demands, the sense that he was turning into more of a product than a person. He longed for something genuine, something to remind him why music truly mattered. He'd slipped out of Memphis before sunrise, telling no one, dressed in simple clothes, sunglasses, and a cap pulled down low. He cruised the quiet back roads of Mississippi, the same ones he'd known as a poor kid from Tupelo, when music was still simple and pure. Around 10:30 a.m., Elvis heard something that made him ease the car to the roadside. Gospel singing, rich and soulful, drifting from a small white wooden church tucked off the road, half shaded by ancient oaks draped in Spanish moss. The church was modest, hardly bigger than a large room with a plain cross on top, paint chipped here and there, steps worn and sagging from years of faithful feet. But the sound pouring out was vibrant, alive with a raw spiritual energy no fortune or studio could ever create. Elvis lingered in the car a moment, just listening. This was what he'd been seeking without realizing it. The sound of people singing not for crowds, not for pay, not for glory, but because their faith made every word real. He stepped out and approached slowly. Through the open windows, he saw around 40 people, all black, in their Sunday finest, pouring their hearts into song. An older woman at an weathered upright piano, a pastor in a plain suit behind a simple wooden pulpit, children beside their families, some joining in, others just soaking it up. Elvis paused at the doorway, unsure. This wasn't his place. These weren't his people, at least by the usual divisions of the world. Would he be accepted? Would he disturb something holy? As he wavered, a small hand slipped into his. He looked down to find an 8-year-old boy with big brown eyes and a soft smile. The boy said nothing, just held on and gently tugged him inside. He guided Elvis to a seat near the back and motioned for him to sit, then settled beside him like they'd always known each other. A few heads turned toward the stranger in sunglasses, but no one gawked or murmured. The singing flowed on unbroken. Elvis took off his sunglasses and cap. In the soft church light, without his stage look or styled hair, he blended in as just another man in ordinary clothes. No one recognized him. No one knew Elvis Presley sat among them. The congregation was singing an old hymn, their voices weaving harmonies that felt like they rose from beyond the walls. Elvis had sung gospel his whole life and earned Grammys for it, yet here he felt like a beginner among true masters. The hymn closed and the pastor spoke briefly about faith and endurance. Then he invited anyone moved to share a song or testimony. A few rose. An elderly man whose voice quavered with years but carried deep conviction. A woman whose notes brought tears to many eyes. Each one was raw, unrefined, and more touching than anything Elvis had witnessed on any stage. Then the boy beside him stood. Small for his age, in slightly oversized pants and a neatly pressed but thin shirt, he walked forward without a trace of fear. "I'd like to sing," he said, voice clear and gentle. The pastor smiled warmly. "Go on, Samuel, bless us with your gift." Samuel stood before the group, closed his eyes briefly, and began an old gospel piece his grandmother had taught him. No music behind him, just his pure, clear voice. Elvis felt something crack open in his chest. The boy's singing wasn't flawless technically, no fancy runs, no show, but it held something Elvis hadn't felt in ages, perhaps not since his own childhood: total, unguarded honesty. The child wasn't performing, he was praying, each note an offering, each line a true cry of faith. Samuel sang of grace, mercy, being cradled in loving arms, never facing darkness alone. His small voice filled the space, not with volume, but with innocence. It was like hearing an angel, if angels were 8-year-old Mississippi boys without lessons who simply knew music in their bones. Tears slipped down Elvis's cheeks. He didn't hide them. Others around him wept too. This was gospel's true purpose, not awards or crowds, but moments where heaven drew near. When Samuel ended, he opened his eyes and smiled, not proud, just joyful. He returned to his seat as the congregation murmured, "Amen," and "Bless you, child." Elvis rose without thinking and applauded, not the restrained church claps, but real, heartfelt applause, like he'd received countless times, but seldom offered. Heads turned in mild surprise. Applause wasn't usual here, but they smiled at the stranger's clear emotion. "That was beautiful, son," the pastor told Samuel. "Thank you for your gift." Samuel sat again, and Elvis leaned close. "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard," he whispered. Samuel looked up. "Thank you, sir. Do you like to sing?" "I do," Elvis replied, softly.
"Would you like to sing something?" Samuel asked, with a child's innocent directness, unaware of nerves or pressure. Elvis paused. He hadn't come to perform, he'd come to receive. But Samuel's open face and the church's warmth stirred him. "I don't want to intrude," he said. Samuel took his hand again. "You're not intruding. That's not how church works. Everyone's welcome." Those simple words struck deep. Everyone's welcome. When had Elvis last felt that anywhere? Samuel stood, still holding on. "Pastor, this man wants to sing too." The pastor nodded kindly. "Come forward, brother. What's your name?" Elvis rose, heart racing differently from any concert. "Elvis, sir." A few shifted at the name, but in 1968 rural Mississippi, not everyone followed pop culture. Elvis was just a name here. "Well, Elvis, we'd be honored," the pastor said. Elvis stepped up, facing open, kind faces. No screams, no flashes, no demands beyond honesty. "I'd like to sing, if that's okay," he said, voice trembling a bit. "Samuel reminded me what singing really means. I want to do it from the heart, like he did." He closed his eyes, as Samuel had, and began the same hymn. No mic, no backup, no polish, just his voice, air and real, singing words that once comforted his mother. At first, quiet, almost rediscovering how, but then stronger, not louder, but truer. He meant every line, needed it perhaps as much as anyone there. Silence followed when he finished. Then the pastor approached, hugged him. "Brother, you've carried something heavy. Leave some of it here with us." Elvis nodded, unable to speak, tears flowing freely. The congregation started another joyful hymn, waving him to stay up front. Samuel ran up, took his hand again, and Elvis Presley, who'd sung for millions, joined 40 strangers in gospel, feeling like he'd returned home. After service, Elvis tried to leave quietly, but Samuel followed outside. "Are you going?" "I should, but thank you. Your singing reminded me of something vital." "What?" "It's not about how you sound or who's listening. It's about meaning it, letting it come from somewhere real." Samuel tilted his head. "My grandmother says singing is praying twice, once with words, once with your heart." Elvis knelt to his level. "Your grandmother is wise. Can I ask, have you heard of Elvis Presley?" Samuel thought, then shook his head. "No, sir. Should I?" Elvis smiled, perhaps his most real in months. "No, better you haven't." He pulled out all his cash, several $100s, and placed it in the boy's hand. "For your church, the piano, whatever they need. Don't say who it's from, just from someone who needed what you gave today." Samuel stared wide-eyed. "This is so much, sir." "It's not enough for what you gave me. Promise you'll keep singing just like today. Don't let anyone change it, polish it, or turn it commercial. Keep it pure." "I promise," Samuel said solemnly. Elvis replaced his sunglasses and cap, walked to his car, and drove off lighter than he'd felt in years. Samuel watched the car fade, then ran inside with the money. The congregation marveled, wondering about the stranger. "He said his name was Elvis. He sang real pretty," Samuel explained. An elderly woman froze. "Elvis? Lord have mercy! That was Elvis Presley in our church." Excitement buzzed. They'd worshipped beside one of the world's biggest stars without knowing it. The tale would echo for generations. But for Elvis, heading back to Memphis, the real gift wasn't his visit. It was Samuel's reminder. True music isn't fame, fortune, or awards. It's connection to something deeper, something honest. Elvis returned to gospel with fresh passion afterward. He'd always loved it, but post-Samuel, his recordings carried a new rawness and truth. Samuel grew up in that church, became a music teacher in rural schools, sharing the power of honest song. He never chased fame or stages, but he guided hundreds of kids to sing with the same purity that once moved Elvis to tears. When Elvis passed in 1977, Samuel was 17. Hearing the news on the radio, he felt an odd bond to the man he'd met once. He recalled the stranger singing through tears, kneeling to ask him to keep it pure. Only then did he grasp the full meaning. Elvis Presley, at fame's height, had entered their church seeking something lost, and an 8-year-old boy unaware of his fame had shown him what it was. The money fixed the piano, patched the roof, bought hymnals. They used it wisely, always remembering it came from a stranger who needed their gift more than they needed his. The story became church lore, handed down. But the heart of it wasn't Elvis's presence, it was what Samuel taught Elvis, and what Elvis asked of Samuel. Real music isn't performance, it's truth. It's opening your heart and letting something pure flow through. Samuel honored that promise. He never let anyone alter his singing. He never sought spotlight or sales. He sang as his grandmother taught, as he did that Sunday when he unknowingly gave Elvis Presley one of life's greatest lessons. And every time Samuel sang, every time he taught a child to sing from the heart instead of for claps, he kept it pure, just as Elvis had asked. If this story of humility, pure faith, and music that transcends barriers moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about the power of staying true to yourself. Have you ever learned something important from an unexpected teacher? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more untold stories about the moments that reveal what really matters.